The Zelvari Imperium had spent centuries expanding its empire across the stars. They had conquered entire star systems. They had subjugated species weaker than them. And they had never lost a war. Their fleets were unrivaled. Their technology was superior. So when they detected an unregistered human warship at the edge of their territory, they weren't concerned. Target identified, Terran vessel. Scanning now. The ISS Vengeance, a lone Terran warship, floated in deep space just outside the Zelvari patrol zone. Looked primitive. Bare metal plating. No visible energy shielding. No thermal cloaking. Hardly a warship worth worrying about. Commander Zyrek Thal, officer of the Imperial War Analysis Division, scoffed. Humans have always been reckless. Let's see what they've built this time. With a wave of his clawed hand, he ordered the scan. Maximum penetration. I want to see everything. The Imperial sensor array pulsed. Invisible waves of quantum resonance energy washed over the human warship. Every system, every detail, every secret would be laid bare. The humans won't even know we're watching. Or so they thought. For a fraction of a second, everything seemed normal. Then, alarms screamed throughout the Imperial command ship. The mistake. Zyrek snapped his head up as warning lights flashed red. What is happening? A terrified technician stammered over the cacophony. The scan. Something's wrong with the scan. Zyrek stormed forward. Explain. What did we find? The technician gulped and pointed to the holographic display. It was glitching. Data flickered, corrupting the moment it was recorded. The deeper the scan went, the more the system failed. Numbers didn't add up. Readings defied physics. Sensors overloaded, trying to comprehend what they were detecting. This isn't possible. Zyrek snarled. What is not possible? The technician turned, his face pale. The ship, the human ship. It's a technological impossibility. Zyrek froze. The holographic model of the human warship finally resolved. And what he saw made his blood run cold. A ship that shouldn't exist. The ISS Vengeance was a monstrosity. Its outer hull was layered with what appeared to be basic titanium plating. Except it wasn't. The deeper the scan went, the denser the material became. Somehow, the metal's internal structure changed the further in it went, growing into something impenetrable. That alloy doesn't exist, Zyrek whispered. It can't exist. The ship's weaponry was even worse. At first glance, the sensors detected ballistic cannons, primitive by galactic standards. Then the deeper readings came in. Kinetic railguns capable of near light-speed acceleration. Plasma artillery with heat signatures rivaling small stars. Energy weapons of unknown classification, constantly adapting and shifting frequencies. And then, there were the reactors. Zyrek's claws dug into the console as he read the energy output. This much power should tear the ship apart. This much power should not exist. And yet, there it was. The human message. Before Zyrek could process the horror of what they had just scanned, the human ship turned. A message pinged across their comms. Incoming transmission, ISS Vengeance. Zyrek's mouth went dry. They know we scanned them. A voice came through. Come. Amused. Human. Hey there, Zelvari. That was a pretty deep scan you ran on us. We noticed. Zyrek's hearts pounded. They're talking like we didn't just breach their systems. The human voice chuckled. I'm guessing you didn't like what you saw. Pause. Tell you what. You can pretend this never happened. Just, don't try it again. Zyrek's claws shook. The human warship sat there, completely motionless, as if daring them to react. His instincts screamed at him. Do not engage. Do not test them further. But Zyrek was an Imperial officer. And Zelvari did not back down. He straightened. Fire a warning shot. A low-level plasma burst launched from the Zelvari flagship. It raced toward the ISS Vengeance. And vanished before impact. Zyrek blinked. What? A technician gasped. The shot was absorbed. No, redirected. Data scrolled violently across the screens. The human ship didn't just block it, it sent the energy back into deep space. Zyrek stared in horror. The humans had perfected energy absorption. They could consume enemy attacks and turn them into fuel. We've made a mistake, he whispered. Then, the human ship moved. It didn't fire. It didn't run. It simply turned its weapons toward them. Zyrek felt fear for the first time in his life. The humans didn't need to attack. They just needed us to know they could. And that was far, far worse. Zyrek Thal had never felt fear like this before. Not when he led the Burning Claw campaign against the Vaskine rebels. Not when he stood before the Imperial War Tribunal after his controversial victory at the Shattered Star Nebula. Not even when he faced down the terrifying Void-born Leviathans in deep space. But now, staring at the ISS Vengeance, a single Terran warship, he knew. We were never prepared for this. The human ship hadn't fired a single shot. And yet, its mere presence paralyzed the bridge of the Zelvari flagship. The crew had no idea what to do. Even worse, the silence was deafening. The ISS Vengeance just floated there, watching. It was waiting for them to make a move. Panic in the Imperial fleet. Status report. Zyrex snapped. Technicians frantically worked at their consoles. We're trying to disengage the scan, sir, but what? Zyrex demanded. The technician's hands shook. The system won't let us. Zyrex's eyes narrowed. You mean the humans hacked us? And no, sir. The system is rejecting its own commands. It's like what? The technician swallowed hard. Like it refuses to acknowledge what it just saw. The words made Zyrex's blood run cold. The Imperial Sensor Array, one of the most advanced scanning technologies in the known galaxy, was actively denying its own findings. As if the human warship was something it couldn't comprehend. This isn't just superior technology. This is something beyond us. The implications hit Zyrex like a shockwave. Cut all scans. Now. We're trying, sir. But before they could even attempt a hard shutdown, the human warship moved. The impossible jump. It was subtle at first. A slight shift in position. Then the ship simply disappeared. Zyrex's claws tightened around the console. Where did it go? A navigator screeched in panic. It's right, and oh, it's there. No, it's everywhere. Data flooded the holoscreens. The ship had jumped. But not through hyperspace. Not through warp drives. Not through any known method of FTL travel. Instead, it blinked in and out of existence, phasing through multiple points in real time. It wasn't teleportation. It wasn't cloaking. It was something far worse. It was perfect maneuverability. Zyrex barely had time to react before. The ISS Vengeance reappeared directly in front of them. Close. Too close. Zyrex's mandibles twitched in shock. They should have detected the movement. They should have seen the buildup of energy. But there was nothing. It had moved without effort, without distortion, without even a single ripple in space-time. A sickening realization settled over him. The humans don't just have superior ships. They have transcendent control over space itself. The message. A communication pinged across the Imperial comms. Incoming transmission, ISS Vengeance. The crew froze. They're talking to us again. Zyrex took a deep breath and accepted the transmission. The same human voice from before came through. Come. Collected. Unshaken. Still scanning us, huh? Zyrex's mandibles twitched. The human chuckled. You guys really don't know when to quit. A tense silence followed. Zyrex forced himself to speak. What? What are you? Another chuckle. We're human. We're explorers. Scientists. Builders. But when we have to be? The voice darkened. We're something else entirely. The screen flickered. For a brief second, a data package forced its way into the Imperial network. They hacked us. Again. Zyrex turned to his technicians. What did they send? A trembling technician pulled up the file. It was a single recording. Zyrex played it. His mandibles clicked in horror. The recording. The screen showed Earth. It was a historical document, a relic from centuries past. It displayed old human wars, battles that predated their interstellar expansion. It showed their primitive aircraft bombing entire cities. It showed their soldiers fighting in trenches, knee-deep in mud and blood. This is how they fought before space travel? Before planetary conquest? Then the footage shifted. It displayed modern human warfare. Human ships engulfing entire enemy fleets. Ground forces annihilating vastly superior alien armies. Weapons so brutally efficient that even automated defense systems couldn't react fast enough. The final clip? A single Terran dreadnought entering a planetary war zone. And ending the conflict in less than a minute. One ship. 1 minute. An entire war erased. The recording ended. The bridge was silent. Zyrex felt his throat dry up. Then, the human voice spoke again. That was us. That was us before we knew aliens existed. Imagine what we're capable of now. The communication cut off. And suddenly, Zyrex realized the terrible truth. The humans had been holding back. Zyrex Thal had fought in countless wars. He had watched planets burn. He had led armadas into battle. He had orchestrated genocides in the name of the Zelvari Empire. But never had he felt this level of terror. The recording had ended. The bridge was silent. The crew, veterans of 1,000 battles, sat frozen at their stations. Not one dared to speak, because they all understood what it meant. We never stood a chance. The fear of the unknown. How did we not know? A voice finally croaked. The question cut through the silence like a blade. Zyrek turned his cold, reptilian eyes toward the speaker, Commander Valric, his second in command. He was a battle-hardened officer, known for his ruthlessness. And yet, his claws trembled. How did we never see this coming? Valric whispered again. Zyrek knew the answer. Because we assumed they were weak. It was the greatest failing of the Zelvari Empire. They had believed humanity to be a minor species. A curiosity. We thought they were primitive. We thought they were fragile. We thought they were nothing. But the recording had shown the truth. Humans had never needed to conquer the stars to be terrifying. They had been monsters long before they left their own world. The warning. The holographic comms flared to life. Another incoming transmission, from the ISS Vengeance. Zyrek hesitated. Do I really want to hear what they have to say? The bridge crew stared at him. They were waiting. Dreading. Slowly, Zyrek reached out and accepted the transmission. The same human voice came through, calm, almost amused. So, I take it you got our message. Zyrek's mandibles clicked. You could have simply told us. A chuckle. Oh, Admiral, where's the fun in that? Pause. Then the human's voice hardened. Here's what's going to happen next. Zyrek braced himself. You're going to leave this system. You're going to tell your superiors that the Terran Federation is off limits. And you are never, ever, going to scan one of our warships again. Zyrek tried to keep his voice steady. And if we don't? The human didn't answer right away. Instead, a new data packet was sent through. Zyrek glanced at his technicians who frantically decrypted it. Then the bridge lights flickered. Wait, no, not just the bridge. The entire fleet system shuddered. A warning siren blared. Admiral, we've lost primary controls. What? Weapons are offline. Shields are dropping. Zyrek's eyes widened. The ISS Vengeance hadn't fired a single shot. And yet, every ship in his fleet was now powerless. We don't know how, sir. A technician choked. They just turned everything off. Zyrek's blood ran cold. A final message came through. A single sentence. You don't want to see what happens next. Then, the ISS Vengeance vanished. Not jumping to warp. Not activating a cloaking field. Simply ceased to exist. And at that moment, Zyrek Thal understood. The Zelvari Empire had made a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. And they were going to pay for it. Zyrek Thal sat frozen on his command throne. The bridge was eerily silent, filled with the blinking lights of now useless control panels. The ISS Vengeance was gone. But its message remained, burned into his mind like the searing heat of a plasma cutter. You don't want to see what happens next. And yet, Zyrek knew. What happens next was already in motion. The paranoia begins. The Zelvari fleet limped back to Imperial space, their systems gradually restored as they fled the Terran Federation's borders. But the damage had already been done. Whispers spread through the Empire. The humans are untouchable. They didn't fire a single shot, and they won. They disabled an entire fleet with a single transmission. It wasn't long before the paranoia began to fester. Fleet commanders hesitated before engaging human ships. Governing officials second-guessed expansion orders. Even Zyrek himself, once one of the Empire's most fearless admirals, found himself double-checking every single transmission that entered his network. What if it's them again? The Empire had waged war for centuries. But never had they encountered an enemy that made them fear their own systems. The Council's response. Zyrek stood in the Imperial War Chamber, a massive hall lined with towering pillars of dark obsidian. Before him, the High Command sat in a semicircle, the most powerful Zelvari in existence. Emperor Xylos himself leaned forward, his golden eyes burning with fury. Explain yourself, Admiral. Zyrek's mandibles clicked. He had prepared for this. The humans are not what we believed them to be, my Emperor. No, the Emperor hissed. They are worse. The chamber rumbled as murmurs spread through the council. You let them humiliate our fleet, Zyrek, one of the generals snarled. You dare return with only warnings? Zyrek's claws curled into fists. With all due respect, General, if we provoke them further, we may not get a second warning. The murmurs grew louder. Some dismissed him as a coward. Others, however, were not so sure. Because if the Terrans could disable a fleet without firing a shot, what else were they capable of? Emperor Xylos was silent for a long moment. Then he uttered 4 words that changed history. We must test them. Zyrek stiffened. No. Don't do this. But he knew there was no stopping it now. The Zelvari Empire had made up its mind. The invasion of Cygnus, 9. The attack came without warning. An entire Zelvari battle group descended upon Cygnus, 9, a small Terran colony on the outskirts of known space. The Empire expected a slaughter. Show humanity their place. Break their illusion of power. Remind them who rules the stars. But what happened instead became a legend. At first, the Zelvari fleet met no resistance. They landed their ground forces, expecting an easy occupation. It was a mistake. Because they weren't fighting the Terran Navy. They weren't fighting human warships. They were fighting civilians. Farmers. Engineers. Doctors. Men and women who had never set foot on a battlefield. And the Zelvari lost. They lost horribly. The humans fought without fear. They fought with a ferocity that defied all logic. Even unarmed, they turned industrial equipment into weapons. A fuel worker rigged his refinery to explode, taking an entire platoon with him. A scientist reverse-engineered Zelvari comms and fed them false intel, leading their own forces into ambushes. A single elderly woman barricaded herself inside a bunker and eliminated 30 Zelvari with nothing but hunting rifles and hand grenades. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. Not of humans, but of Zelvari. The Imperial forces fled in disgrace. And with them, fled the last remnants of the Empire's arrogance. The final transmission. Days later, Zyrek Thal sat alone in his war room. The Emperor had not spoken since the loss at Cygnus, 9. The Empire was shaken. We can't win. Not against them. Not against the species that fights like demons, turns colonies into fortresses and warships into nightmares. Then a final transmission arrived. From the Terrans. It was short. A single video message. Zyrek opened it. On the screen, a human soldier stood before a ruined Zelvari dropship. He was bloodied, covered in soot, but smiling. He raised his weapon. And in perfect Zelvari dialect he spoke. Come again if you'd like. We could use the target practice. The screen went dark. Zyrek Thal lowered his head. For the first time in his life he felt true defeat. And he knew, the war was already over. The legend of humanity. The Zelvari Empire never invaded Terran space again. They never scanned a human warship again. Because they understood at long last. It was never about the ships. It was never about the weapons. It was about the species. And humanity? Humanity was something far, far worse than they had ever imagined. The end. Fire like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to The Void Narratives. We bring you the best HFY stories every week. Because let's face it, humans are just built different. Rocket collision.